and it goes through cold calls with clients, all the things you didn't think about you're going to have to deal with. How many of us started out giving our phone numbers out, and when people called, you didn't know what to say? Yeah, and you don't know how to react. You don't know what questions to ask.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk Podcast, a regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Mike Knoche, a contractor in Fairbanks, Alaska. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk Podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding Podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. Mike, it is such a pleasure to have you on this show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Patrick. It's an honor to be here.
Oh my goodness. So first off, can you tell me how you ended up in Alaska at age 22, like we talked about in an email conversation we had ahead of the show?
Well, it seemed like a good idea at the time.
My guess is you were looking for adventure like every other young person who ends up in Alaska. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. I threw everything I thought mattered into my Nissan pickup truck and just drove north.
Where were you from originally?
I grew up in upstate New York originally.
And what was the appeal of Alaska?
Well, definitely adventure and outdoorsy stuff, and just that unknown. I'm a world traveler. I've always been a person who seeks adventure, so it just made sense to me at the time to go there and check it out. And I would have no idea that I'd still be here today, but I fell in love instantly. I live in a really neat town.
So for folks who may be unfamiliar with the geography of Alaska, can you describe Fairbanks' location? It's kind of in the center of the state. Am I right?
Yeah, it's the Golden Heart City. It's the middle of the state. It's mostly a mining and industrial town with the university. A university actually is a large part of our population. The city's about 30,000 people. It's the second largest city, so it gives you an idea of how big Alaska is. And my borough is about the size of Connecticut, and it's about 100,000 people.
My goodness. And is that where you started out in Alaska, or did you find your way there after touring around?
I actually started in Fairbanks, and I've been here, but I've done work all over the state. I used to be a field technician and, flew out and stayed in remote places for months on end, living in tents and doing work.
So was becoming a contractor or a tradesperson part of the original plan, or is that something that happened when you got there?
I don't think anybody knows they're going to be a contractor. I've interviewed so many people for my podcast, and nobody was like, I grew up thinking I'd be a contractor, right? We just wind up here. Tradesperson didn't surprise me. I went to college like I was told to. I saved money and I'm in that generation where they were like, go to college, and they looked down upon trades, but they said, have a trade as a fallback,
a backup.
Yeah. And so I did. I was a cook and I became a carpenter, and I'll never take back the cooking and all the restaurant work I did, and I was a landscaper, all kinds of things. And but I thought I'd be a career office person, working for some agency, but a lot of people I've met along the way would have never said. They would have met me and said, no, you can think you're going to do that, but you're not. So being a general contractor makes sense now, for sure.
So how'd the carpentry come about? Did you have folks in the family who did that introduced you to it, or did it come about having to make a living?
It came about because I was in college and I went out to Colorado to visit a friend and stayed a little longer. And he was like, hey, you want to work on my framing crew? And I was like, sure. And I showed up and they made me move like 5 tons of nails twice in a day, and I did it and didn't complain. And they
said, you're perfect.
Yeah, they said, you are perfect. You're like a dream grunt. And I didn't do it all the time since then. I went back and forth, but when I moved to Alaska, it afforded me an opportunity to buy cheap land and build. There was no rules here. So I'm not saying my first house is perfect, but I did all my homework the best I could to build. It's on permafrost, so it's still there today. My foundation's okay. It's still alive. There's a lot of houses sinking.
Do you
into the
live in
ground.
this house, or you just happen to know about it still?
Oh, I can drive by and see it.
Uh huh.
Yeah, I live close by. I live pretty close by to a bunch of houses I built, so it's but
Of
yeah,
course, we're all interested in how our things hold up over time, right? And you get the luxury of seeing, I'm sure, stuff that you've been around forever.
Yeah.
So, what are the biggest challenges about building in interior Alaska? Like building materials, I'm sure are harder to get than they are in the lower 48. I'm guessing weather is a huge obstacle. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Materials, we definitely don't have the variety. Until I was on social media, this last year, especially with my podcast, and getting involved with the building science community there, I don't see much of what they are showing me in their pictures, and I've inquired about it here, and they say, oh, that's too expensive. No one wants it. I mean, there's a lot of old school thinking still. So we do the best we can with what we've got. And the supply chain stuff, we have issues that other people don't, and other people have issues that we don't. We're basically an extension of Canada when it comes to that.
So your lumber and panel products are coming from British Columbia, most likely, right?
A lot, yeah, a lot of it is, and so we have our challenges there, and stuff is insanely expensive this year. I mean, a truss package that I ordered 2 years ago or 18 months ago is now exactly 50% more than it was. Like, that's stifling. But Alaska challenges, I'd say the length of the building season is a challenge, and extreme cold is another challenge, because, for instance, right now, load limits are about to come off our roads. So no one's started digging in the dirt yet, unless load limits are off in their area. And so it's like June, start digging. Hopefully you got concrete by the end of June. If you do, you're golden. But delays, and you get your concrete in July, and then you're just racing against time. So you can get your drywall, everything's in, and then you're drywalling and having the outside dry your drywall, and not trying to heat your mud and tape
building
through the
to
winter.
do that stuff. Yeah.
It's way more challenging to deal with that, and we have to deal with it. It's all part of it.
We should tell folks who aren't from a colder place that load limits are resultant from mud season. Am I right? You can't have big trucks driving on the muddy road, so they wait until they dry out sufficiently
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, yeah. So we have such a long winter, and breakup is spring. Breakup happens very rapidly, and the ground is just soft. All the roads are just mush, and we've got permafrost in a lot of areas. So big equipment riding over it just breaks stuff up really fast. And so you have like 25 to 50% axle limits for dump trucks, or different kinds of trucks, or low boys to haul equipment, and no one's going to haul anything. No one's going to pay anybody to haul anything at a 50% rate, because you're paying for truck time.
You're paying the whole amount for half the load.
Yeah, exactly. And the dirt's not the expensive. I mean, dirt's getting expensive, or gravel's getting expensive too, but it's the fuel and the time that's costing. So that's our limitation there.
And you mentioned that the longevity of the building season. So you can get started in June, and when do you have to be realistically working indoors before it's too cold to be outside?
Well, it's a personal choice. I want to be dried in pretty quick, but I'd like to be inside working by November. Like the drywall's done, because when drywall starts, I'm out of there. I'm on to another project, and if that can be done by the end of October, that's beautiful. Sooner the better. But there are people that work outside all winter now. It's not as cold here as it used to be. It's definitely a different environment. But then your challenge is the dark, because we get down to 4 hours of daytime in Fairbanks in the winter around solstice. So by November it's getting very dark. So you're limited by that. And then the extreme cold thing I was talking about, like it's not as cold as it is in other places, or I'm sorry, it's not as cold as it used to be, but stuff breaks. Like it starts getting cold right during like drying season, everybody's crunch time, and things just start breaking because of the cold. Because cold comes in September and early October. So that's added challenges.
You mentioned permafrost. That has to complicate construction in many ways. Is it a given, or is it vary by location? And like, how does a foundation work in a permafrost environment? Like, how does that work?
Okay, so my new rule for a long time is don't build on permafrost. Period. Just don't do it, because it's going to sink. It's going to move. I have actually a dedicated web page on my site that explains why you shouldn't build on permafrost. It's a personal opinion, but it's pretty true. And our local, we have the Cold Climate Housing Research Center here, and they actually have a link to my page to help explain it to the public too. Because I get so many calls for foundation adjustments, and I used to do that. I won't touch it now. But, okay, to rewind for a second, we have what's called discontinuous permafrost in the interior. South-facing slopes exposed to the sun, there's no ice there. It's thawed, if there was any. North-facing side is often permafrost. Low-lying areas, poorly drained areas, permafrost. So down by the creeks, it's frost. You know it. So my first place was it's like middle swamp, we called it. And upper swamp, it's nice area. It's just not well-drained soils. And what people do is take off the organics, bring in gravel in lifts, usually fines, and compact it in lifts up to like 3 feet thick, and then go ideally 10 feet out. And then you're just post and pad.
You build on that?
It's post and pad. And what a lot of people run into is they have like 10 or 15 points that the house is sitting on. And then when it moves, you have to adjust from, you find your high spot, and then you're just adjusting, and it's chaos. And so fast forward, the best thing to do is you put that pad in, and then you drive pilings 60 feet into the ground. And those pilings are in frost that's not going to thaw in theory, because it's so deep. Our surface frost is definitely thawing rapidly. Now, what I tell people who still buy permafrost, because there's still frost for sale in the valley below me, is to build on 4 points.
And that's so you can level it later if you need to. Is that correct?
Yes. Make it easy on yourself, because you buy cheap land and you think you got a deal, but you have to bring in all that material to do it properly. So it just went up to the same cost as a decent piece of land on the hillside. I understand the mentality because I was there.
Yeah.
But you end up spending the same amount, and then you have a maintenance issue built into your house. Like, we already don't maintain our houses well enough. We're humans. We all have deferred maintenance going on with where we live. And I know you're going to ask me about that. And I don't want to answer. I don't want to talk about it.
So what about, one thing that I was thinking about ahead of our conversation, like, what about septic systems? How the heck does that work?
That's such a can of worms. So
I don't think that's what it is.
They do these mounded systems with a lift station. So you come out and you've got a lift station, and then all that gets pumped up and then into a pile of gravel with leach rock. I mean, it's above ground septic. It looks absolutely insane. You've got these mounds in people's yards. The alternative to that is an engineered septic system that is basically a really expensive cesspool with a fan, and your material gets pumped into there, and they've got some ultraviolet light to help break things down. And what comes out the other side is actually just trickles out is the water that's clean. It's basically just an above ground sewer system or a cleaning system. So, and then you get it pumped once a year or once every other year, depending on how much you use your indoor bathroom. And then a lot of people have outhouses if in those areas. I mean,
one of the things that
and no running water.
It seems complicating is that there's a lot of heat associated with effluent, right? You know, your water, so you put a tank in the ground with a lift station. What prevents that from sinking into the permafrost as it's warming up the surrounding soil? I'm guessing there's a solution for that. There would have to be.
The water treatment system that I was talking about is above ground. And yeah, with the lift station is generally in the ground. So it's got to be super insulated. And it's not a good idea. Like I'm not saying I do not condone any of this.
Yep.
But the reality is a lot of houses are built in these areas, and we just have to deal with it. I mean, if there was a way to erase all that and start over, or provide housing for these people so they can get out of their situation, it's a tough one, and I don't really want to do that work as a builder. I wouldn't be involved in it for a new build in any way. I've helped people out with it, but it's ungratifying because
it's going to be a problem at some point.
It can be, and you can hope for the best. And I don't like doing work where I hope for the best. I want my work to be warranted.
When you have really long days during the summer, do you work more hours because you have to put in the hours that you wouldn't otherwise in the winter? Or is it just you can't work that many hours because you might have 20 hours of daylight, I'm guessing, in the height of summer?
We don't have night right now.
Yeah.
Already. So we won't see stars again until the end of August as of right now, till the beginning of August. Yeah. You get pretty wired in the summertime. It's hard to sleep. I black out my room completely. And you can work longer. You got to be careful. You want like running your crew and burning them out and things like that, because it's easy to keep going. But it's also easier to come home and work at night on like the office stuff. And in the winter, it's you just feel like hibernating because there's no light. So I think a lot of people take advantage of the long nights. I try to take advantage of long nights to enjoy them a little bit too. I mean, that midnight sun is incredible. I try to be in bed long before midnight these days, though.
You wrote a book about becoming a contractor. Can you please tell me what it's like? What is it about, and what made you want to write it?
That's a great question, and thanks for asking. I, as you know, didn't know I was going to be a contractor, as we talked about, and I had so many different things I did before I became a contractor. But when I was a carpenter, I saw what I was making, and I was like, I can't do what I want to do down the road at this rate. I got to I got to start this thing. I got to start my own business. And I thought it was going to be easy. I was like, I'm good at this. Just going to fire up and make bank. Like get a magnet for my trucks and business cards. And like now I got a business problem. And that's a quote from one of the guys that was on my podcast. But, what I wanted to do, I searched every book. I read Fine Homebuilding. I've tried to use every resource, and a lot of it was still over my head because of the way it was written. It didn't have like the very, very, very basic stuff. So I decided in 2016, when I was running my crew and making checklists for them and like super organizing, so we're communicating better and not, because we're miscommunicating quite a bit. I was like, I need to turn this into a book. So while I'm experiencing it, so a person can see what going from basically being a handyman is to running a crew with 3 people. And that's what this is. That's what the book is. And it's basically, you buy a laptop, you use the software it came with. You're broke. Like, this is the simple way to deal with organizing. And it goes through cold calls with clients, all the things you didn't think about you're going to have to deal with. How many of us started out giving our phone numbers out, and when people called, you didn't know what to say? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you don't know how to react. You don't know what questions to ask. You don't know to get their address. You hang up. Like, you just don't. So it's like checklists of how to go through all these steps, what to do the first time you go to their house and talk to them. And
are these your own lessons, or are these lessons of your own and gleaned from others?
This is my, if I knew then what I know now on paper, I'm answering all the questions I had for myself, because, I failed my way up. I made a lot of mistakes, and we all do. And on the podcast generated out of the book. The book's not out. I kind of was doing a test run of the content on a podcast, and the podcast is now taking off. And that's the Contracting Handbook podcast. Is that all the people on there say the same thing? Like, we didn't know what we were doing. We all reinvented the wheel. So I'm trying to remove the barrier to for new builders of any trade. Here's some simple things. You read this book, it'll take you 6 or 8 hours total, but it'll take 2 or 3 years to implement, but it'll cut years off the mistake train,
Can you imagine a more complicated job that has no real training for the people who do it? What is contracting like? I can't think of any parallel.
There isn't anything like it. And last night and the night before, I hosted 2 Instagram Live episodes. Aaron Jones, who you interviewed recently, was on there.
Yeah, we'll talk about him in a little bit. Yeah.
And his partner Gina Hoyt, and a whole bunch of people, 2 different nights. And we talked about defining yourself as a contractor, defining your business, and everybody had a different take on it. And it was just fascinating because we all are so different, and it is a very individual program. We're all going to have our own specialties because of who we are, but at the end of the day, there's some things at the beginning that we just have to nail down.
What do you think is the single biggest thing that you wished you would have known when you started?
I wish I would have known just to be genuine. I mean, it's not that I wasn't genuine. I was just nervous. I was insecure. And if I could have let go of some of those insecurities and been more confident in how I spoke to people, that would have been a bigger deal right away. I know I lost jobs because I didn't sound confident. But I had the skills. I know I could have done any of the things I was being asked to do. I just didn't sound like I could all the time. And I think that was a big one.
How do you get beyond that, Mike?
Experience. Just keep going. And I think a part of it is organizing for calls, organizing for how you're going to talk to people, thinking about what you're going to say before you go into a meeting, thinking about what they're going to ask you in the meeting. Prepare your mind, because after a couple times, a lot of the questions they're going to ask you are going to be the same. So be ready to answer those confidently. Because when you don't answer confidently and you don't speak to them, you start backpedaling and you start just babbling. And just having a clean, concise conversation makes it a lot easier for your client to digest as well. And it gives them space to talk, which is important.
I bet you learn a lot more listening to them oftentimes than you do talking, I'm sure, right?
I think that part of my success is that I didn't talk over people. I think a lot of not the contractors I've talked to on my podcast, but I think, traditionally contractors get this bad rap for being, kind of rough on the edges and this and that, and can be, be overbearing in their explanations and be dismissive of people's ideas. And I think you just need to really hear what people say before anything, and then slowly work what your
expertise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And And yeah.
What about the podcast? So it's an interview show, right? And you talk to other contractors about their work and their experience becoming contractors. Is that a good summation?
This season, yes. And so that I just finished season 2. I'm working on season 3, and season 2 was all interviews with people from all over the world. So it's a worldwide thing now. It's been broadcast in 68 countries.
You're making me look bad, Mike.
I was shooting for a global audience because I know that our business experiences are the same. We're all experts at how we build where we live, but the business stuff is the stuff at the bottom is the same. We all have these struggles. And so anyway, I interviewed a woman from New Zealand who opened the doors of her plumbing business 4 days before I interviewed her. And in the same season, I interviewed Steve Basic, who has, vast experience as an architect. And he, everybody knows who Steve is. And he, shared so much information that made it tangible for a young builder to feel more confident talking to their clients realistically about what they need to do. And that was really neat. Now, in the first season, I was going to do just topical episodes. So I have these, 5 to 15 minute long episodes where I just talk about a subject. It's just me talking into the ether. I didn't know if anybody was going to listen. So there was one of those per week and then one interview per week. And I've got about 30 more of those topical episodes for another season coming up. But I would try to take the topical episode and tie it into the interview somehow. And those topical episodes were defining your company, like 6 things not to do in a client cold calls, 7 things to do in client cold calls, things like that you can listen to and go, oh, I've never even thought that I should think about this. And one of my electrician friends listens to it. He just started about the same time I started the podcast, said those cold call episodes he's like, every day I'm like, wow, that I wouldn't know what I'd be doing without it. I can't imagine not having heard those episodes. So that's a kind of a neat affirmation.
It's there's some universal conversations, right, that you have with tradespeople who have the same, challenges and headaches that is part of the business. You were mentioning Aaron Jones before. You guys talked about how doing more jobs and having more employees doesn't often translate into making more revenue for your business. Can you talk a little bit about that? I found that conversation very interesting because I think the general inclination or natural inclination for tradespeople is, I need to do more work. I need to do more to make more money.
Yeah, that's a common trapping for contractors. It's a stepping stone and a trap. And
is this something you went through?
Yeah, I did. And it's that go big or stay small, but don't get caught in between kind of thing. And I definitely, my crew was on fire. My confidence was up, and I had a summer booked out. I mean, I was pretty booked. I always leave gaps for growth and scope, because growth and scope happens when you're a remodeler. And at the time I was mostly remodeler. And some like bigwigs reached out to me. And one of them was a local architect that I really admire. And I couldn't believe he called me. I wasn't even going to go look at the job. And I didn't know who it was. And when I got there, I realized who it was. And I was like, oh, wow, why did he call me? Of all the people, he knows everyone. And we took the job. And we were working crazy hours. I hired 2 more people. And I had a lot of other jobs going on with just my subs. And I'm working crazy hours. And because I got to do so much organizing at night. All day long, I'm running between job sites. And at the end of the year, I'm looking at the numbers, and I think I should be like making bang,
rolling in dough.
Yeah, and my CPA gets back to me, and I'm like looking at the.
You're like, this is wrong.
I'm looking at the. I am. I'm like, where's my money? Where's my money? And we sat down and went through it all, and more mistakes were made.
Because there's more of everything.
More of everything, and I was running my guys into the ground. And I also so there's a diminishing return. I was unhealthy. My eyes were twitching. I wasn't sleeping. I was stressed out of my mind, and I made more money, no doubt, but it wasn't the percentage more for the time, for the effort, not worth it. And I really, really right away was like, this is not worth it. I don't need that money that bad, because I'm not living the life anymore. I am my company only. I'm not taking care of myself. I'm not hiking. I'm not like exercising, not doing things that make me feel good. And money makes you feel good, but
not if it's killing you.
Not if it's killing you. Yeah. So I completely reevaluated how I was running my business and really just started laser focusing on what I wanted, and eventually phased out having employees because, that's various reasons, but that was always a goal. But at one point in 1 year, it was more profitable on the management side than it was on the employee side, on the just my business side. So
how does one figure out, after taking the shotgun approach, what is the right thing to be focusing on business wise? How do you know what's good for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it probably is different for every builder. Last night, my talk in my Instagram live, I had Tom Lawson on, and he's straight upstairs, and he does stairs, and the work is crazy. It's all laminated, bent. I don't know if he's in Fine Homebuilding yet or not, but he should be. And he's got his niche, and he found it. I think for myself, I had to vary it with my crew. When I was alone before I had a crew, I was just doing kitchens and bathrooms, and I still was like figuring it out how to deal with the business side. But when I had the right crew and we were doing kitchen remodels, and we did like 10 in 1 year, by the third one, they're not even speaking to each other. They're reading each other's minds. Yeah. They're moving around each other, tapping each other on the shoulder. Everybody knows where they are. Everybody knows what's going on. And you're charging the same amount for each one, essentially, but you're making more and more each time.
Because of the efficiency.
And I always tell, young builders, once you get going, like, don't charge hourly anymore. If this job took you a week to do, this is just an example. If this job took you a week to do 2 or 3 years ago, and now it takes 2 days, charge the same amount that you did then. There's no reason that you shouldn't be charging for your experience.
I've heard people say that because I'm good at this, I shouldn't be punished, right? I shouldn't be punished for doing things efficiently and quickly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And if you have clients calling you, telling you that that's wrong, just find a polite way to let them go. Just don't deal with it. Let them go. You don't need them. Something better will come along. But back to the, finding your focus. I just think each person has to figure out what's the best thing, because you'll also find yourself as an employer doing jobs to keep your people paid. And that is not how you should run your business. Well, probably all guilty of it out there. Raise your hand. I've looked at jobs where I'm like, wow, my labor made more money more than me on that job. I'll admit it. It has happened. I've never taken a big loss on a job, and I'm very grateful for that, because that's another issue. But
you should be thankful for that, because it's oftentimes things beyond your control.
Absolutely.
So here's a real Practical question. So what are the must-have garments for an Alaskan carpenter? I'm guessing you're dealing with bugs in the summer, cold, obviously, in the winter, cold in the summer. What do you
Well,
need? I'm coming to Alaska. What do I need in my wardrobe?
um, my my buddy Tom always says, "Well, I take my long johns off on the 4th of July, and I put them back on the 5th of July." So, so you just got to be ready. You always got to be prepared.
You
You
have
got
different garments in your truck all the time, I'm guessing, right?
you try to,
Yeah.
and then sometimes you show up on the job site and a freak storm comes in, and your laborers are out there in t-shirts freezing their butts off, and it's like I try to have extra gear in my truck so I can be like, here,
Yeah.
take it. But yeah, we need extra toughs. We need winter boots, sneakers, whatever. You just got to be prepared for everything.
What about the mud? Like nothing was more challenging than walking around Western Pennsylvania's red clay in the springtime. It would get so heavy that it would pull your rubber boots off, right? Or like you'd be climbing up the ladder and you'd be slipping on the rungs. I'm sure that's a problem too.
Well, the load limits thing eliminates a lot of that because but there's a lot of work going on right now that people are in the mud. It's the same thing. You just got to deal with it. None of us want to, and I don't want to. I try not to work in places like that.
Yeah. What about the bugs? Alaska is renowned for its insect populations. I think you'd agree.
Yeah, the mosquitoes are state bird. And they're pretty thick in some areas right now. You get down on the permafrost and it's nuts. And we get like 3 waves right now. They're giant and slow, so you can slap them, but soon enough they get bad. And you just buy a lot of DEET flat products and throw it out for the crew. And
I'm guessing DEET is really the only thing that works because when I've been in mud season in Vermont, the normal repellents just don't work.
yeah, I mean, everybody's got their own thing with that. There's natural ones too, and I'm pretty much just like taking my cutter and spraying it all over myself. It's like just showering in the stuff sometimes.
So what are some of the things about working outside in Alaska that folks probably wouldn't think of? What else is a challenge? I'm guessing getting sunburn when it's 24 hours of daylight would be a risk too.
Yeah, no, that's probably one of the biggest things that people don't consider is how much sun we get. And I don't think people are really taking care of themselves in that regard. You're busy, your hands are dirty, and then you're not really thinking about wiping, sunblock all over your face. And then you're sweating and then the sunblock gets in your eyes. So that's not really, but that is a big one. And yeah, I think that you hit upon a good one there.
Well, you mentioned it earlier. So can we talk about your own house now, please? Any problems you're ignoring willfully or on the sly?
Willfully? I should just replace my whole plumbing system.
Did you build your house or did you buy it?
Actually, the house I live in, I bought for the view. It's a starter house that is homeowner built. A lot of houses here are homeowner built
because of low income, I'm guessing, right? Folks are poor.
It's more that people. It's like a frontier town, and people know that they can build their own house, and they do. And actually, like the neighborhood I would live in is very wealthy because it's a hillside. I mean, for the most part, people are not. I've got a south-facing view of the Alaska Range. It's pretty amazing, and I'm going to build a nice house up here when I feel like spending the money on it. Because I live pretty simply, but yeah, I need to do some work on the house.
You're leaving it there. Does Fairbanks have a red hot real estate market like the lower 48? Are folks moving up there now because they can?
We have a large military presence for one. And so we just had a crew of F-35 fighter jets roll up, and we're supposedly getting another one, and we're really short on housing. Yes, the housing market is on fire, but there's an absolute housing crisis, and there's a labor crisis, and soaring demand. There's all these things happening at once, and I bet that's just anybody could say that where they live. We need more houses badly, and
are there problems with? Are there obstacles to more housing? I mean, are folks like they are in much of the country resistant to new development?
No.
Because Alaska's so big, you figure?
Well, I mean, there's like, if you're talking about industry, there's resistance. There's both sides. But as far as housing goes, here's the thing: we need more land available. So, our land owning entities, like the university and the borough and the mental health trust. Well, I don't need to get into who they are really, but they're not cutting land loose right now, and we need more of it. But we also have, I'm telling you, a huge labor crisis. So if you called any builder this year where I live to build a house this year, I doubt they said yes, because we were still sitting on many, many, many foundations from last year that sat under snow that need framing. We're just short on framers. We're short on everything. Every one of my subcontractors is busy. I don't give out their phone numbers to anyone.
Right. Because
you
need them working on your project.
Well,
right?
also they don't. They're just like, don't.
Yeah.
Do not. We cannot take any more. We can't like try to weed through all these calls, because we're all getting calls all the time now. You used to build a reputation to get phone calls, and now people are just desperate. The messages you get are crazy. You could tell people have called every number 10 times. And so we are in a crisis state of needing more houses. And when a house goes on the market right now, it often gets bid up, 10 to 25% above asking price.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, Mike. Is there anything you'd like to tell or ask our audience before we go? First off, how about your website?
That's the contractinghandbook.com. Okay. And I'm the Contracting Handbook on Instagram, where we actually have been discussing the podcasts. And I just finished season 2. I don't know when this is going to air, this podcast we're on now. But there's interviewed 20 people in the second season of the show, 17 in the first, or 23 in the second, 17 in the first. So there's 40 interviews. There's 80 episodes, with a lot of just me talking about running the small company starting out. And I'd love for you guys to join into the conversation there on Instagram or commenting in the reviews on what you think.
I hope they do. And what do you hope to accomplish this building season? How many projects? Do you have that kind of? Do you have a list of things you need to get done this building season?
I do. I'd like to build a couple spec houses, and we're lined out on that. Like, we're waiting for load limits to come off where I've got land, and that's all supposed to happen next week. So it'll be total chaos for everybody, because everybody's going to expect equipment in their yard that day. Everyone. Sure. It's rinse, wash, repeat. I've got projects I'm managing with my subs, and really one of my main focuses is to finish the book and get it out. I've asked 12 guests on from my podcast to contribute to the book. So just imagine me chasing 12 contractors now. Like, find the busiest person if you want to get something done. Well, I just asked
in 12. The height of the building season, yeah.
What?
I
Yeah.
feel grateful for your time today. Thank you for taking out of your busy building season to talk to me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
No, the pleasure's all mine. I'm honored to be here. This is great. I appreciate you contacting me and bringing me on to talk to this amazing audience of yours.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks to Mike Knoche for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Keep craft alive. Happy building.